Hello, my dear friends. This is Rabbi Aharon Dobinsky coming to you today from the holy city of Jerusalem in the beautiful state of Israel. I'm going to talk to you about something you all went through last week. Well, at least most of you, I'm sure. If you were in shul last week for Shavuos, you listened to Megillah Ruth, the story of Ruth. The story of Ruth is an exceptional story for a multitude of reasons, and I'm only going to cover a couple of them today because I think they're really important for us to concentrate on. Now, Ruth was from Moab. Now, just to set the stage for you, for those of you who weren't there last week, she and her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law. These are two daughters who were married to the sons of Naomi, and they all came to the land of Moab because there were problems where they were living, and they needed to get to a place that was more friendly for them. So they came to Moab. Well, they were there for a period of about 10 years, at which point Naomi's husband died. A little bit later, the two brothers who were married to Ruth and her other sister also died. So they were free to go now. They could go home. And that's what they were told to do. Their mother Naomi told them very clearly, look, I'm not that young anymore. Doubtful I'm going to have any more boys. And even if I did, are you really going to wait around until they grow up so you can marry them? So why don't you go? You're both beautiful. You're both wonderful. Go and go do something. And that was a great advice, really. She gave them good advice for somebody of that time. And the other sister-in-law, she went, but not Ruth. Why not Ruth? Not only this, but we're told that Moabites and Ammonites cannot marry into the congregation of Israel. Wow. But they did. They did. And let's take a look at why they were allowed to do this. The rabbis have come after the fact and have said, because it says Moabites, not Moabitesses, Ammonites, not Ammonesses. That, in other words, it was the men who were prohibited from marrying into the land of Israel. Why were they prohibited from marrying in? And how long? They were prohibited because when the children of Israel came through after leaving Egypt, they were not met on the road by these people who should have offered them bread and water at the very least to help them on their way. Well, the women could have done that too. But in that time, women didn't do that. It was strictly the area of the men, and the men did not do that. So the women actually were not prohibited, which is really interesting because if you see, they're prohibited, by the way, forever. It doesn't say, in 4 or 5 generations we'll forget about this and everything will go back to normal. No, it was forever. For eternity is the word that is used. It's for eternity. They could not marry into the children of Israel. Yet these women did. Not only did they do that, but you're going to find out something really amazing in just a little while. So Ruth decided she doesn't want to leave. And her mother said, please, leave. It's best for you. Leave. And Ruth said the immortal sayings, where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wow. That's quite a mouthful for somebody who was prohibited, if she were a man, from even marrying into the Jewish people. That's quite a mouthful. It's an amazing declaration. And what it does is it gives us an insight into this woman, Ruth the Moabitess, why she was such a wonderful person and as a result of this happened. See, she decided she would stay with her mother, and she devoted her life. I don't mean she came to visit on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I mean, she devoted her rest of her life to being with her mother-in-law, who was no longer really her mother-in-law because her husband was dead. So she decided she was going to stay, and she put this other person first. This is loving kindness, the likes of which we rarely see. To put someone else's needs ahead of your own. It's an amazing thing. Now Rabbi Nachman tells us we need to look for the good in everybody, and that in everybody there's some good, even if it's just a little teeny tiny bit. It's a little bit. But we have to look for it anyway, because it's important that we try to see the best in everybody. Remember, Hashem created man in his image. So how can you not at least be kind to somebody like that? At least be understanding. Now, I'm not saying go out and find every cat and dog on the street and every miserable human being and bring them to your home and have them for dinner. Not saying that at all. What I am saying is find something that's good. My father, Alva Shalom, he used to, when I was a kid, he used to say, you could always say to somebody, you sweat less than a fat person I know. Now, that's not very nice. But again, it sounds better. It's still not nice. You want to be able, if you can't say something nice, this is something he also told me, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And this is a very important lesson for us to learn. So here we have Ruth, the Moabitess, being with her mother, Naomi, and taking care of her, giving up her whole life to her. And Naomi guided her at this point to Boaz, who she would later marry for only a day. It only lasted a day, and Boaz perished. He died. But that's not the point. It led her to a whole different life. And because of her loving kindness to her mother-in-law, who is really no longer her mother-in-law, she was given the ability to marry this absolutely wonderful man who was a judge, who was a wealthy man, who had a lot of fields, who could buy other fields. She had the opportunity to do all of this. Not that that's why she did the one. She didn't do the one saying, well, if I'm nice to her, maybe something nice will happen to me. I can't crawl inside of her head and say she didn't think that, but nowhere does it mention that. And had that been an important point, it certainly would have been mentioned. So here's this woman full of loving kindness. So much loving kindness that she later becomes the progenitor of David Amelech, King David. She was his great great grandmother. She was the one. She was the one. She was not, at first glance, not even allowed to marry into the people of Israel, but we find out that wasn't necessarily true. She was, and not only could she marry into them, but she was given the privilege, the honor of being the progenitor of David Amelech, King David, one of the most loving kindness people of all. He loved people so much. He tried so hard to be the best king he could, and before the king, the best person he could to all the people, in spite of the fact that they didn't treat him well necessarily. But that's how he was made. And it comes from Ruth. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and in this case, they were absolutely right, because David was also quite full of loving kindness. So the question comes, do you invite all these horrible people into your lives? And the answer is no. You don't have to invite them into your lives. You do have to respect the fact that they are a creature of Hashem, that they were created by your Father in heaven, that God created these people, and therefore they have a value. They don't necessarily have a terrific value to you. That's something you can decide. You don't need to let everybody into your life. Do you let everybody else into your life? Do you really let people into your life all the time? Sometimes these people can be the worst thing you could do to let them into your life. But you have to have a certain amount of respect for the fact they also are the children of Hashem. And because of that, you have to look for what's best in them. The loving kindness, which is brought out in the Megillat Ruth, is what we should all be striving for. We should be trying to be that type of a person who can find a way of giving to people, maybe even people who don't deserve, but we give. And we have a certain amount of respect for them just because of the fact they are human beings. The bad, we must push to the side. I know it's nothing bad. You don't have to hang out with everybody. Not everybody that you meet has to be your good buddy, your best friend. However, what we want to do is we want to show loving kindness. We want to show that we believe that all of us are creatures that were created by Hashem, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that we are all worthy of at least a little bit of respect for that reason, if nothing else, for that reason only. So let's start looking at our lives, and let's remember the fact that even though we can't necessarily be friends with all these people, some of them, again, we must avoid because they will deteriorate our lives. But we still want to be in a position where we can say we dealt with everybody honestly. It's one of the things that they will ask you when you get to heaven. Did you deal honestly with your fellow man? If you can say yes, then you did a good thing. And your life is going to be much better. So for right now, my friends, have a great Shabbos, a great week ahead. Remember, look to the people who are around you to focus loving kindness upon them, like King David, like Ruth the Moabite, and like we should all do in our life, because this is what Hashem wants us to do. If we're created in His image, that's what He does, so it's what we should do as well. Be well, have a great week. God bless. All the best.